For decades, we've basically been told that ADHD is a deficit, a disorder, something that needs to be fixed. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? In this explainer, we're going to flip the script and look at it through a completely different lens.
Seriously? What if the entire framework we use to talk about it is just fundamentally flawed? An operating system that isn't broken, but is built for a totally different set of tasks. One that is, in its own way, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so let's really dive into this idea of a different operating system. The whole concept here is that the ADHD brain isn't some kind of mistake in humanity's code. Now, it's a vital feature.
Think about it from an evolutionary point of view. For us to survive and thrive as a species, we needed two basic types of brains. You needed the settler brain, right? The steady, predictable brain that's fantastic at maintaining the village and keeping things stable. But you also desperately needed the explorer brain, the innovator, the risk taker, the one who just had to taste the new berry to see if it was poisonous, the one who gets the wild idea to invent a wheel. This way of looking at it frames the ADHD brain as that essential explorer, a brain literally built for discovery and change.
And this is a really crucial point. We are not talking about some behavioral issue that comes from your upbringing. No, the source material is crystal clear on this. It's a neurological difference. It's a distinct type of brain that's highly genetic and gets passed down through generations.
So, if it's a different operating system, what's actually going on under the hood? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the brain in a trance, where we're going to look at what the neuroscience actually tells us. Okay, so the key here is something called theta brainwaves. Now, in a typical brain, these waves are buzzing when you're in deep meditation or in that fuzzy, dreamy state right before you fall asleep. But here's the fascinating part. Brain scans show that people with ADHD have way more of these same theta waves when they are wide awake, just going about their day. And the effect of this is huge. It's almost like living your life in a constant, low-grade creative trance. This is where that incredible imagination and creativity comes from. It also explains why they experience such big emotions and can be so sensitive. It's why they can just get lost in thought, building these vast, intricate worlds inside their own minds. It even explains why so many people with ADHD say their childhood memories are kind of hazy. It's not because something bad happened, it's because they weren't fully present. They were off daydreaming in their own incredible mental universe. So if the brain is in this constant creative state, what's actually driving its actions in the real world? Well, that brings us to Section 3, the dopamine search engine. You see, the ADHD brain is basically a search engine that's constantly scanning the world for dopamine. That's the chemical linked to motivation and reward. The system it runs on is super simple, but incredibly powerful. When dopamine levels drop, the brain doesn't see it as a minor thing. It registers an urgent, almost primal need for a hit of stimulation. And that immediately triggers a behavior, any behavior, that can get that hit as fast as possible.
And this is where the brain gets really, really creative in its search. It might suddenly give you intense hunger pangs to get you to sprint to the kitchen for sugar or caffeine. Or it can literally manufacture a burst of anger or anxiety out of thin air because the conflict that follows gives a potent adrenaline rush. It's why someone might subconsciously poke the bear in a relationship. They're looking for that reaction. And that feeling of being completely frozen on the couch, just scrolling and scrolling for hours, the source material calls it a form of catalepsy. The brain is so starved for a dopamine hit that it just locks on to the easiest source it can find. Now, this relentless search for stimulation leads us to one of the most misunderstood parts of the ADHD experience. Section 4, why boredom literally hurts. Okay, get this. This is the crucial piece of the puzzle. For a brain that's wired this way, boredom isn't just a feeling. It's not just in your head. Brain scans show that a lack of stimulation, boredom, actually activates the exact same parts of the brain that process physical pain. This changes everything, right? When we tell someone to just focus or push through something boring, we are, without realizing it, asking their brain to tolerate a pain signal. As the source material puts it so bluntly, you can't just fight pain. You wouldn't. This isn't about willpower. It's a core feature of the operating system. So if you can't fight it, what on earth do you do? Well, you learn to work with it. And that brings us to our final section, hacking the creative brain. First, let's talk about something called stimming. It's short for self-stimulation. Things like shaking your leg, clicking a pen, or biting your nails. People often think these are just nervous habits, but they actually serve a really important neurological purpose. And that purpose is focus.
The movement from stimming gives the brain that little bit of stimulation it's craving, which then frees up mental space to concentrate. In fact, studies have shown that when a person with ADHD is stimming, the blood flow to their frontal lobe, that's the brain's command center for focus, increases by a whopping 40%. It's like a built-in focus tool. So, once you get this, you can start using some really cool brain hacks. Like, if you can't focus on a boring job, your brain needs more stimulation. So instead of fighting for dead silence, try putting on music or having a TV show you know well on in the background. Can't sit still and relax? That's because the brain needs active rest, so go for a walk or dance around. Having trouble getting out of bed? Your brain needs a dopamine hit to get going. The stress of being late definitely works, but a better plan might be putting coffee right next to your bed. And for those racing thoughts at night, don't try to calm the brain, crash it. Listen to an exciting podcast that forces it to focus on just one thing until it gets tired and shuts down. And here's one final, really powerful hack. Find your golden hour. Everybody's got a time of day when their brain just naturally comes alive. For the creative brain, that could be 10 at night or 6 in the morning. The key is to stop fighting it. Figure out when your golden hour is and then guard it with your life. Schedule your most important, difficult tasks for that time. So when you start seeing ADHD not as a disorder, but as this specialized explorer brain, the whole conversation changes. It's not about correcting a flaw. It's about learning the user manual for a really high-performance creative mind. And that leaves us with one last big thought. How could our world, from our schools to our offices, be redesigned to better embrace and empower the creative brain?